All set, James?
Yes, we are. Go ahead, Andrew.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a calm and contemplative meeting of the St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee Designation Subcommittee on Friday, July 18th, 2025. It is now 2:36 p.m. and we have quorum, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. Uh, and we'll begin by this gathering by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is the home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of the indigenous people. And when I was reading that through earlier, I was realized that some of the properties we're looking at today are located right on some of the historic pre-settlement trails. So a lot of the heritage we're going to be talking about today has been shaped by that. So it sort of ties those things together. Um, we move on to today's agenda. I don't believe there's any additions or deletions. Anyone correct me? No. All right. So I have a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Mark by scratching his head.
Yeah.
Uh, in favor? The move that the designation subcommittee adopt the agenda for this meeting held on Friday, July 18th, 2025, copies having been previously distributed. In favor? Okay, that carries. Then we move on now to consider the minutes of the previous meeting, which was July 13th, 2025. Are there any questions, comments, or changes in regards to the minutes that were distributed? No. All right, seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the June 13th meeting? Brian? Brian moves that the designation subcommittee approve the minutes of the meeting held on Friday, June 13th, 2025. In favor? All right, that carries as well. Any declarations of interest? Um, other than my own, I guess we're going to be talking about a little bit about the St. Paul Crescent property, but that's not one of the main items, so I don't know if that's relevant in this case. Anyone else? No? Okay, there being none, we move on to the business of the meeting. Item 7.1, which is the statement of cultural heritage value put together by Christian for 15 Welland Avenue. Christian, you want to take it from here?
Yes, I can do. James, are you putting up? Yes. Okay.
So, looks like we have some slides here with some lovely photos of the property. And then we also have the statement of significance as well. So, Trishan, which did you want to start with? Do you want to?
I guess it'd be good to start with the statement of significance.
Okay.
So, I mean, while James puts it up, I'll just kind of go over some of the parts. Of course, the start of the draft statement is like the description of the property. It's located at 15 Welland on the north side of Welland Avenue. Um, and like it's a three-story Second Empire style building with a couple of extensions out on the back. Um, the main floor is currently used as commercial with the vacant commercial space on the upper floors. And I believe that the rear extensions are also used for the commercial spaces, and the upper floors are also vacant. Um, moving on to like the actual designation and the design physical value. The house is a very well preserved 19th century Second Empire home. It is characterized by its mansard roof, as well as the ornate cornice brackets underneath the roof line, which are very characteristic of the Second Empire. There's a lot of very high level of craftsmanship. There's a high level of craftsmanship present in the architecture through a lot of the brick voussoirs, the stone keystones. That's a good view. That way you can see the front facade. Um, there's there's ornate detailing on the window frames. There's the classic orange brick exterior siding and the arched windows as well. A lot of these features were quite costly to build at the time, and they're relatively rare in Ontario, especially Second Empire architecture, from my understanding. And so this building very much showcases a rare and unique architecture as well as a high level of craftsmanship. Then going to the historical value, the building has direct association with both the educational and industrial history of St. Catharines. It acted as the administrative offices for Brock University when Brock University was still being set up in 1964 and 1965. Before that, it was the school board's main office for since 1920. And then before that, it was lived in by Ralph Hamilton, who was a manager and then later the president of the Packard Electric Company, which was home to the first fully fitted car manufacturing facility in Canada and was a major player in establishing car manufacturing in St. Catharines, which continues to be quite a major in the industry in the city. Then for the historical and contextual value, the property is linked to the neighboring Memorial School because both properties were purchased by the school board in 1920. The school board then had the properties next door demolished to build the Memorial School. And looking over the historical research done on the Memorial School, it was found that the architect, who was a famous architect, who I'm sure I wrote the name of in this paragraph, but I can't find it. Oh, there it is. Arthur Edwin Nicholson. He designed Memorial School to follow some of the characteristic elements of 15 Welland, as well as the other property on, I believe, 23 Welland, including the major setback from the road, as well as kind of the orange brick material. Then the property at 15 Welland also is linked to the surrounding neighborhood in terms of the lots, with George Pierce being the initial owner and the person who had the house commissioned. He was a major player in selling a lot of the land in the surrounding area. And then on top of that, the I've also stated that the building is a prominent landmark on the street. It's 3 stories, which is significantly larger than the surrounding buildings, which are on average 2 stories and rarely exceeding 2.5 stories. It's very characteristic Second Empire design, makes it really stand out from the surrounding buildings, as there aren't any Second Empire buildings in the direct vicinity. And the orange brick exterior siding also makes it stand out, as well as the prominent setback from the road. And so, based on the heritage guidelines, it very much acts as a view and landmark structure along the street, which helps organize people within the area. So then moving on to heritage attributes, I've written these out and I'm not sure, should I take a moment to let everyone read them, or what do you think would work best?
I think we can, if you want to talk about them, and I can kind of highlight where those are on the building if we want.
Okay, for
I don't know if
sure.
you can see my mouse here, but I'll do my best to point things out.
Okay, so to start off, the symmetrical three-story rectangular massing and central projecting tower, the steeply pitched mansard roof on both the main structure and the central projecting tower, the decorative frieze and cornice that top the central projecting tower. That's kind of like that white part on top,
Mhm.
which has some decorative elements on it. The cornice brackets, and decorative frieze that run below the roof line. The gable on the front projecting tower. The two dormers on either side of the projecting tower with two sets of windows, and I've referred to them as pediment gables, but I'm not sure that's the correct word. And I also highlighted this because there's a decorative a decorative board on the side of the one that's on the right hand side in this photo, but on the left hand side, that kind of like decorative element, the little curves on it have been lost. Then the central dormer with an arched window, decorative frame, and gable. This one also has the decorative like curves on the frame. Then the 16 arch double hung 8 pane windows on the front facade and sides of the central projecting tower with brick voussoirs, gray stone keystones, and gray stone windowsills. The large arched central entranceway outlined with a brick voussoir and topped with an ornate gray keystone. If you scroll down to one of the other photos, you can see behind the metal sign. And yeah, in that one, you can see the very ornate keystone. Then the orange brick exterior siding, sets of symmetrical chimneys on the west and east elevations. Then I also included the property's setback and location on Welland Avenue as it's related to the neighboring buildings, as well as the placement of it next to the memorial school. This being my first time writing out heritage attributes, I am very open to suggestions for alterations. So let me know. And let me know if you think I've missed heritage attributes, such as maybe the windows on the side. I was also curious about whether or not kind of the rear extensions on the building would count towards heritage attributes. Not the ones that are built more recently, like the 2000 and 2003 extensions, which are the ones that are cast in stucco, but maybe the 1.5, 2-story vernacular structure there on the back with red brick. As well as, I guess, thinking about it now, I'm realizing probably the dormers on the sides and rear of the building would also count as heritage attributes.
If I can
Ryan?
just toss in a couple of thoughts here. Yeah,
For sure.
that rear 19th century portion is definitely, I think, an attribute.
Okay.
I mean, I would call it a rear L, ELL, which, I mean, it's commonly seen on buildings from that period. The other thing, you're describing it as a Second Empire building, which, I mean, that upper roof line certainly is Second Empire in style. But I'm wondering if we can say Second Empire with an Italianate influence, because
Sure. Yeah.
that projecting tower is, to me, it's if you didn't have that Second Empire roofline on it, I would say it's an Italianate influenced building.
That makes sense. I actually do kind of agree with that. So I will change that then.
Great minds think alike.
Mhm. Any other comments or thoughts? Yeah, overall, that looks like an excellent job, Christian. You say you're sort of new to this, but it's actually pretty good. It's not my area of expertise either, so I don't have a ton to add. But I thought it was very well done. I had one question for you about the just in the contextual value. And this is sort of not directly related, but you refer to George Pierce's early 19th century subdivision of lands between Thomas Street and Ontario Street. I don't really think of that as him being the primary mover there. That was more of an Adams undertaking, which Pierce married into and was involved with, but it was really more his wife and brother-in-law's property than his. So I just thought if that could be a little more clear unless you've seen something that makes him more prominent than that I thought.
I guess because he owned or he was in control of the mortgages, wasn't he, after I can't remember the year, 1870 something, I believe, wasn't
Mhm.
he?
He,
But I guess if you're right that he wasn't kind of the mover of the subdivision of land, and so yeah, if you think that that's not strong enough, I can totally remove that. I
yeah.
still think like in terms of contextual value, its relation to the educational history and like industrial
Yeah.
history are more relevant.
I think definitely his connection to the house, obviously, but I would even include his wife, Julia Adams, her connection to the house. She was prominent in her own right as
Right.
well. And in terms of the other properties, I mean, as was often happened in the time, his name was used interchangeably with hers often in the land records because he was the husband and her rights were more limited, being a woman and so on. But ultimately, when the lands were transferred, it was always from her to whoever, and with him sometimes standing on the mortgages for her. So, yeah, just as a point of clarity, I think is all.
Sure. So are you thinking keep in its connection to the properties but change it to Julia or
Well, he was quite significant. They were individually quite significant,
right.
and then together, early power couple type of thing. So, it would be nice to see her included as a significant resident and owner.
Okay, that's a good idea, and I will do that.
Yeah, I mean, Adams, the connection with George Adams definitely should be kept in.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
I mean, he was sort of, he was up there with like William Hamilton Merritt and all the really early movers and shakers in town. So he was important.
I guess thinking about it then, what I can do for the contextual value is also talk a bit more about that early history and how it's part of like the Adams estate.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, that becomes a little tricky because when you talk about that sort of Mount Rushmore of early prominent St. Catharines residents, it's hard to find a property that wasn't on land owned by one of them at some point. So, you know, you
Okay,
don't
that's fair.
overweight it, but or else everything's it gets painted by the same brush. But it is something worthy of mention for sure. I agree. Any other thoughts?
The
Okay.
only question that I had, and maybe Brian knows the answer to it, is so it's funny, next door, the Memorial School is part of the Queen Street Heritage District, which is interesting because it's one, it's not on Queen Street, and two, it's adjacent to this great property here. And I'm curious if Brent, do you know if they looked at this property as part of Queen Street, the Queen Street HCD back when I know that was 30 years ago, but I've always thought it was curious that they kind of left this one outside of the HCD but included the memorial school.
Um, the only reason I think why Memorial School was included in was because it was seen as a focal point when you're looking down Queen Street and you
Yeah.
see the school bang right in front of you.
Right.
But because Picasso's 15 Welland is not quite as visible, I think they sort of said, "Yep, ausgeflogen."
That makes sense. I was just curious. It's kind of unfortunate they didn't roll this in with the Queen Street HCD, but it's probably one of the nicest buildings in our downtown, even though it's kind of technically across the street from what we consider the downtown area. But no, I think Christian did an awesome job with this. It's really well done. I don't even think like the stuff where we're talking about, Pierce and Adams and whatnot, like this building on its own, kind of, you don't need to grasp at anything really. It feels like, there's still strong arguments there about, the roles of those people and the contextual value, but there's a lot of history here, and the architectural value is as strong as it gets, right? So, yeah, it's a great property. I'm glad that Christian, you were lucky you got to do this one right off the bat. It's a good one to dip your toe into. Yeah.
Do you think, going off the heritage attributes, do you think like for the dormers that have those decorative window frames, if there's like a way to word in for the existing ones to protect them?
I would go kind of broad. I think the way that you worded it right now, because you're mostly speaking to the two in the front right now, right? Like that's what you've
Yeah,
included.
which
I
I'm
would just
realizing.
say, I would say the mansard roofs. Let's see, you have the steeply pitched mansard roof on both the main structure and central projecting tower. In that sentence, I would also include you could say the steeply pitched mansard roof uh, and dormers. Like you could, or somewhere you have to finesse that sentence a little bit, but I think you can capture all of the dormers in one kind of sentence with the mansard roof.
Okay.
That might be the cleanest way to do it.
And am I being like too specific on the architectural elements, or do you
No,
think
I
it's
don't think
good?
so.
Okay.
Because I think when you look at attributes, what you want to think about is if somebody were to go, want to alter this property, you'd want to prescribe to them like what's important, right? And so, if those features are important, it should be outlined. If it's not included, then it's kind of fair game, right? So, I think the way that you've written this and the language you've used is really well done. So, yeah.
Did we differentiate the difference between the front windows and the side and the back windows being like 6/6?
I know
Oh,
you
if you
mentioned the
zoom
front
in on the
windows.
side window. Uh,
Yeah, because that's I mean, a six
you're
over
right.
six that's different from the 4/4 on the front. So I mean, those are significant in their own way.
Yeah, that is the only window that's like still, I guess, original on the sides. As you can tell, the bottom one was bricked up, and on the other side, I'm fairly certain they've been replaced. Yes, they have.
So I'm
Yeah.
just trying to find a photo of this window a little bit better, but we don't have what it looks like. So
Yeah, no, but it has been modernized, I guess is the word. But yeah, I can totally include the one for the 6/6. If you think that would be a significant feature, seeing as the other side windows have been lost.
I would say, if this is the only existing one that we have, yeah, it should be mentioned.
Okay, sounds good.
Any more thoughts? If not, then we would need a motion to move on to next steps, and I can read through the proposed motion here and then see who would like to move, make the move. What's the right phraseology? Anyway, the motion would be that the draft statement of cultural heritage value or interest and heritage attributes for 15 Welland Avenue as amended through the discussion be accepted, and that staff be directed to proceed with consulting with the property owners and presenting the draft SCHVI and heritage attributes to the St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee for consideration. Anyone like to make that motion? Anyone? Brian? Moved by Brian and then by Mark in favor. Okay, so that carries. So that now I presume will go to the main meeting at the end of the month. James, is that the plan?
I think the plan first is to reach out to the owners. So
Right, okay.
as first, what we did, so we sent out letters a while back to all the property owners as part of this project. If I'm not mistaken, it's been a while now. And so Lauren, I believe, is going to reach out to them, make them aware that this committee is nominating this property, and then go from there, essentially. So yeah, so if it's on the agenda this month, then that means she'll have been able to get in touch with them. And if not, then it'll be pushed to next month. But yeah.
Was there any initial response in the case of this building? I assume there wasn't an overwhelmingly negative response. We probably wouldn't have got to this stage.
Yeah, so when we initially sent out our letters, I don't believe we had any response from this property owner, but that was pretty typical. I don't know how many we actually, I think we only had maybe a very small handful, maybe 3 or 4 that said like, no, I'm not interested in this.
Okay.
And that was when we did our prioritization, I think we took maybe the first top 20 or so. I can't remember. It's so long ago, it feels like, but,
Yeah.
and we sent out letters to those 20, and I think maybe it was like 3 or 4 were like, I'm not super interested in this. And so that's why we focused on properties like this that we didn't hear from. So, but then when you tell them, we're moving forward with a designation, maybe that gets their attention as well, right? So, or they'll have questions at the very least. So, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully they'll be favorable. Okay, so we move on to item 7.2, which is the statement of CHVI for 2 Queenston and 38 Geneva. Lauren was going to lead the discussion. Should we bump that down the list until she arrives, or do you want to take that on,
I
James?
think so, yeah, because I know a little bit about the building, but not enough to talk about it in a way that Lauren would. So I think if we want to jump to the HCD chat, we can talk about that for a little bit and hopefully kill enough time for Lauren to join us.
Okay. So we move on to 7.3, which is the downtown HCD update, and council decision, James, to lead the discussion.
Yeah, so through the chair, as everybody knows, the council deliberated on the downtown HCD on Monday night, decided not to proceed with a plan, and did not provide direction or extra resources to deal with individual designations. Essentially, they did ask us to put together terms of reference for kind of a downtown almost task force, which would be in partnership with, it sounds like, the BIA and some of the property owners there, for basically to provide some direction on where to go with heritage in the downtown. I mean, it's only been a few days since the council decision, so we're we're trying to craft and figure out what that looks like. And so I don't have much to report on that quite yet because we haven't even got that far. But obviously, with the gems that we have downtown, it's important that those properties, receive attention. And so I think Lauren and I are going to kind of figure out, okay, how do we shift this group's priorities maybe towards focusing on the downtown? One of the nice things that our consultants did was they provided us with a list of properties to prioritize downtown. And we can probably all, off the top of our head, name a lot of them. So there won't be very many surprises. And we won't need to go through the kind of due diligence that we did the first time around with all the properties outside the downtown, where we really were looking at them sometimes for the first time in decades, right? So I will likely shift our priorities there. And the nice thing too about the work that our consultants did is they would have already looked at every single property in the downtown to figure out whether they're contributing or non-contributing buildings. And as part of that, they have to figure out under 906, like which criteria would they likely have met. So some of that legwork is done for us a little bit. All the kind of deep dives into history and writing about properties from a attributes perspective like that, we're going to have to start from scratch on. But I'm also hoping that some of these properties have such big histories. I'm thinking about, a property like the St. Catharines Club, right? Where, there's been a lot written about it already. We have books that include information about it. We might not need to do the massive deep dive into every single person who owned a property, right? Because we know the St. Catharines Club has been an entity for quite a while. And there's already a story to be told there. So hopefully we'll be able to streamline some of these designations. But we don't have we haven't quite got to the point where we have a strategy in place yet. And hopefully Lauren and I will be able to sort that out as soon as possible, because as you guys know, our runway is pretty short, right? So all these properties are losing their listed status at the end of next year. And we'll see what we can do in terms of, how many can we get designated. Obviously, there's also been a lot of attention on this project downtown. So the other thing we're going to be up against is, getting owners to buy in as well. If you reach out to them and say, we want to designate your property individually, there's been a lot in the news or a lot of kind of talk about what that means. And so we don't know quite yet how amenable, downtown properties or property owners are going to be for that. So we'll cross the road a little bit when we get to it. We'll see if this downtown kind of group that's going to be formed, if that helps. I know, Andrew, you mentioned you were interested in being part of it. I think we'd like to have, at least a representative or two from the Heritage Committee. It did perfectly make sense to have that. I know we had that for the task force that we had created. But the nature of the conversation is going to be different this time around. And so we'll see what kind of conversations will come out of it. Yeah, so that's kind of where we are right now. I wish I was able to say, okay, definitively, this is what we're doing and where we're going. But it's only been a couple days since the decision was made, and we had also realized that this was something that could happen. It's not like it threw a curveball at us or anything like that. But this group has been focused so much on the properties we've been talking about over the last little bit. That wanted to make sure that the work you guys were doing on these properties we followed through on before we shifted our attention elsewhere, because otherwise then we spread ourselves too thin and we're not getting anything designated. So I don't know if there's any questions. I know we're probably gonna have a bigger discussion about it at the end of the month with the rest of the Heritage Committee, but I'm happy to kind of answer any questions that anybody might have about Monday night or the direction going forward. Or if you have thoughts on where we should go going forward as well, that's certainly, we'd appreciate hearing them too.
Ryan, you're looking contemplative there.
Yeah, I mean, I am disappointed with the way that council voted. I feel that we've wasted not only valuable time, but also, a certain amount of money that was put out into this report that, I mean, what's it going to do now? Is it going to just end up as a doorstop sort of thing? Let's say if for some reason council decided to change their mind about it, I guess they can still use the report that was prepared?
Yeah, through the chair, they definitely could. So they wouldn't be able to deliberate on whether the entire study area should be a heritage district, because they can't reopen. Well, they can reopen previous items, but it has to be with, I think it's 3/4 vote or 2/3 vote. So that seems a little unlikely based on how the vote went the other night. But they could reopen it if it was just focusing on something like St. Paul Street, let's say, because technically it would be a different motion that they'd be voting on. And so, if I don't imagine with this current council there would be a desire to reopen it. There's an election next year as well that we're gonna have a new council in about a year and a half anyways. But the next council could decide that it's a route they want to go. I don't know if that would be the case. That would be, up to them, right? So we could, like, that study, as far as we're aware, is in our back pocket for quite a while going forward. Really, you just have to be able to defend whatever the findings are in that study, right? So if even 5 years from now, if they were to say, you know what, yeah, let's move forward with this, as long as the information in there is all still valid, and there might need to be some tweaks here and there, but for the most part, most of it I think will still be defendable and can be used for a district plan. So it would be great if we could use it for more, but in the meantime, but I think the value that we have in it right now is the inventory that it created for us. So we know what was contributing, we know how it met the criteria, or at least how our consultants felt that it met the criteria, and we can use that information, going forward. So, but yeah, it's unfortunate to see, a report that big and, covering so much of the downtown. You wouldn't want to see it not go to use, right? So I definitely share that with you.
So, I mean, like I say, there's also the time that we've lost. I mean, I can't help thinking that there were certain buildings that I've mentioned to you, that I would have liked to have, started the research on them already. And you said, well, hang on, hold off on doing that because, we've got this report coming down the pike. And now I feel if we're starting to have to cherry pick certain properties and start researching them from scratch, I mean, that's going to be, again, a lot of time that is we're going to be devoting to it, as volunteers that, while we could have started this stuff months ago and worked towards it. And speaking of cherry picking, I mean, I guess that's the one thing that maybe before we start doing in-depth research is if we have a list of prioritized buildings, maybe we should reach out to the owners, because personally, I don't want to start saying, okay, let's say, just pick a number out of the air, number 30 St. Paul. I don't want to start doing in-depth research on a building like that and then finding out after I've spent, a month working on it that the owner's saying, no, I don't want to have designation. So we should maybe, think about sending letters out first and saying, okay, would you object to this? And then we can start on the research.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you as well. We don't want to waste any time. We don't want anybody doing any work that's not going to be going towards a designation. I think yeah, I guess we could have started to like do some research on some of these properties early on, like 3, 4, 5 months ago, 6 months ago. It's kind of a hedging of bets, right? And it's like either you might have been doing some work there that would have led to, wouldn't have led to a designation because we would have had the Part 5 designation in place, right? So it's kind of, I realize that you're all volunteers as well. And so, this project in like where you guys have been doing this work on the properties outside of the downtown, has taken up time and energy and resources on your end, right? So I imagine doing research on downtown properties might have taken time away from some of the properties you have been working on. I don't know, but yeah, it's one of those things where you have to kind of manage time and volunteer resources, and you don't want to overload you guys with too much. But yeah, I share the sentiment that like we maybe could have on some of these properties got going earlier when things started to look like it wasn't going well. But at the same time, you don't know what council's going to do, right? So didn't want to say that we've lost our battle before it's even begun, right? So yeah.
There's a couple of buildings, that I think would be, key to, should be looked at, say around the Queen, St. Paul, William Street area. That's where I think the oldest surviving buildings are on St. Paul Street, and then kind of radiating out from there.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like I said, the nice thing about the downtown is there's been a lot written about a lot of these buildings, or at least the gems, right? The ones that like off the top of our head, we could probably, a dozen of these, hopefully we'd be able to just churn out, enough research and enough work to be able to say, yep, they merit designation. We feel confident with, the statement of significance that's been written and everything like that, right? So I think the challenge is when you have properties like, properties on Elizabeth Street, right? Where it's like we don't know a ton about those properties. We know a little bit, some of them we know a lot more, a little more, but they haven't been written about really before, right? So that takes a lot more time and energy and resources. Whereas, some of the churches downtown, like there's been a lot written about them, right? Or the St. Catharines Club, or so some of these buildings, like we're not going to have to do the digging that we had to before. I guess probably a good example is the synagogue, right? Like we had, like Howard wrote like a novel on his own about that synagogue, which made our lives a lot easier, right? So we still produced a big report about it, but at least we didn't have to do the digging because it had already been done for us. So I'm hoping that will be the case with some of these properties downtown.
Mhm. Yeah, so those are some factors, Stephen, to consider when we do prioritize, and I think it was great that we looked at what was more likely to be vulnerable last time and so on. But I very much agree with Brian is to have a sense of ahead of time if we have a list of priority, 20 top priority, and we know that 10 of them are going to be opposed by the all property owner, we shouldn't put the time into those,
Yeah, I agree.
unfortunately.
And I think that's what Lauren and we've kind of started wrapping our head around what that looks like. We have to
Hmm.
put together, the letters and stuff like that and figure that out. But I'm hoping we can get that done ASAP. Like we
Hmm.
totally understand how what we're dealing with in terms of timelines, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah, the quicker we can get answers about those properties, the better things will be for us, for sure.
Yeah.
And then when you start looking at that proposed task force, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, what is that task force going to do? And we're going to waste time establishing it and coming to, terms of reference and everything for it that the HCD wouldn't have done.
That's part of what Lauren and I have been trying to wrap our heads around this week a little bit too, is figuring out what does a productive task force look like, right? And we've been tasked by council to do that, and so we have to follow their direction. And yeah, we'll see what we can do with that. It sounds like at least from the conversations on Monday night, there are owners who want to be engaged in this process and are happy to be engaged in it. I don't know what necessarily that means from their level of involvement. Like, I don't know if they want to do research. I don't know if they want to help in that area. Um, but it sounds like they want a conversation at least. And so we'll probably also talk to the BIA as well and find out if they have ideas as to how they view this group operating or contributing as well. So.
I mean, I wouldn't mind as well maybe taking part in the being part of the task force. I mean, somebody has to be there who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, I think hopefully by the end, well, we definitely will. By the end of the month, when we have the Heritage Committee meeting, we will have a really good idea of what that task force should look like, and we'll bring that forward to everybody. Obviously, council has to approve the terms of reference, so we can only go so far with it, because council might have a different idea from what staff bring forward. But I think whatever it looks like, we'll make sure that there's representation from the committee because, like you said, we need that expertise there, right?
Mhm. Okay.
I just have a quick comment. Um, my friend owns a building on Lock Street in Port, and he was approached by, I think it was maybe Hank Beekes, right, Brian? That's selling those plaques.
Right.
So he was he didn't hesitate. I don't know what the cost was, maybe 75 or $100 for a plaque, but he was so proud to order that plaque and to put it on his building. And he just thought that was the best thing ever that to do. And they took a picture of it. They put it in the Port Reporter. Um, Downtown, those business owners, like you almost need to get like in their head, like to be proud of what they're owning and to have like some type of a standardized plaque where it's on all those buildings. And if they don't have a plaque, then they're kind of out of the loop, right? It's like they need to be part of that. Like if you go to Charleston or Savannah and you see all the old homes and you walk down the street and everybody has this plaque on their heritage homes, right? something like they never really discussed that. Like people never talked about during any of the meetings about how proud they were to have the building and to maybe show that off, right? Like, hey, I own a heritage building. Look at my plaque. Because my friend Gary, he just talked about that for like the last 2 weeks about that plaque on his building.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if that's like the carrot that we can dangle on a stick in front of the property owners. If you designate your building, you get a nice little, date plaque for it. And maybe something we could think about resurrecting is that program that we had a few years back, well, more than a few years back, of doing the framed histories. So, if a property owner has their property designated, we could give them a little framed history that they could hang up, say, in the inside of the main doorway or something that, will tell the story of the building.
And incorporating an element of what the museum's been doing with the historic photos, placing the historic photos, and I think that's very, very impactful. And it reminds me of a grocery store I went to in Chagrin Falls, Ohio, and the store was a modern store, but it was on the site of a grocery store that had been owned by the family for over 100 years. And that tall upper wall around the whole outside of the whole inside wall of the grocery store was all plastered with billboard size historic photos of the meat counter and of this and of this. It was absolutely gorgeous, and I think it was extremely engaging. And I think going through the archive of what's available photo wise and incorporating things like that, then people are walking by those things on a daily basis, and they're people who don't, as we like to say, people who don't know that they love history yet. If they're exposed to it on an ongoing basis, they'll begin to connect and discover it.
And this could be a good way to, for say the public outreach and education subcommittee to start, reaching out to property owners downtown and just the general public who shops and visits downtown to teach a little bit of local history. There was a building. Well, it's still there. It's beside the parking lot that's at James and Summer Street. I think it had like Sonic Records or something like that in it. And I can remember going into that building maybe about 20 years ago, and the kid who was the receptionist at the main desk when I walked in, I walked in the middle of a conversation about local history, and he was just so pleased because he had looked into the title search for that property, and this building that we're in is from 1796 because Robert Hamilton, built it. And I'm looking at the building and thinking, this is from about 1915, buddy. So if we have, date plaques and framed histories, I mean, it might help, get rid of a lot of these preconceptions that people have too about, oh, this building has like the Mansion House, there's no way it was built in like 1810. So, it's a double-edged sword. We can, do a lot with it.
Yeah, I think there's two pieces there, and Holly kind of talked about the pride that owner had in Port Dalhousie, and I think there is pride downtown. The owners have definitely been good stewards. Like you look at the buildings on St. Paul Street, and a lot of them are putting money into them, and doing good work there. And I think that's part of it, right? Is they say, well, look, we're taking care of our downtown. We don't need your help to to do that, or we don't need the government to tell us what to do about this because look, we've been doing a good job of it. And I think the concern from staff's perspective has always been, well, what about the next guy, right? Like it's not necessarily who's here now. It's, if a developer to come in and, offer you a nice amount of money and, you know, you no longer are owning it, and then the next guy wants to demolish it or do something, with their property that maybe isn't good for the downtown. That's the real concern, right? And I think that's why, we were open to discussion about things like just demolition control even, right? Like we didn't need to. I really stressed that we didn't need to have really onerous, Yates Street caliber kind of rules for the downtown because, the downtown needs to be flexible. Businesses change all the time, and you have storefronts need to be, malleable and whatnot. And I think all of us would have been relatively okay with that, and understand that. But, it's the big changes, right? That we know are coming, that we have a lot of concerns about. So I think that was part of it, was people are proud, and I think they do. You'd hear people talk about they love the history of their building. They just don't want to be told, what to do about it. And so I think a program like what you're talking about, Brian, with the like plaques and the storefront window, can't remember how you described it. It was the little history window frame things.
The framed history.
Yeah. Like I think those are, yeah, potentially things that would be really interesting for some of these property owners. And I think it's worth bringing up, when this task force gets going, like bringing those ideas to the table and seeing if they resonate, right? Because people do care. It sounds like people care. Whether or not that's a big enough carrot, I don't know, but it's certainly, worth bringing up. And I think that's the other, like you're talking about the history that the kid in the music store had.
Record store, yeah.
Yeah, like it's like, yeah, maybe he didn't fully understand how to read his title search, but like people are really engaged with this stuff and really interested in it. And we found that out when we did our survey work, right? Like we knew that it was like 80+% of people in the downtown loved the historic character of it. And we have a pretty cool history, right? Like we have a pretty unique history. Um, and this was all about kind of leaning into that a little bit more. Um, and so I think there are ideas like the ones you just mentioned, Brian, that like might really resonate with people and say like, okay, how do we get something out of this? Because I think what I tried to do was really lean into the economic development part. A lot of my report and a lot of my presentation was talking about the economics of it and how it can be good for business, because ultimately these are businesses, right? And so how can something like this be a tool for them? And, they don't want it to be a tool for them, but maybe the other benefits of being tied to history and heritage might resonate with them, or might be something that they can take advantage of. So we'll see. I think there's a starting point, though, at least. Like, I think everybody agrees that there's something here from a historical perspective. They just didn't want the like government oversight on it. That's all. So it's more of a support rather than a, uh, imposition, I guess.
And now I'm thinking too, with the next weekend, with the downtown block party going on. Let's just say, we fast forward to the following year, if they still have a block party going on, maybe some of these things like doing little date plaques and framed histories could be incorporated into that block party day, to say, hey, we've got, 5 properties that are going to be designated, or we've got, five date plaques to hand out, and have little unveilings during the course of that afternoon for those buildings. And I mean, that could be a real woohoo celebration.
Yeah, I think it could. Like it definitely would allow people to showcase their building, right? Like it would almost be like, a show, basically. Like you go from episode to episode, which is just a different building, right? But people could really show it off and talk about why they care about it, what it is about their building that's special, Yeah, it would add an extra layer to it for sure.
And it gets me out of doing a walking tour again next year.
Well, hopefully it's not as hot next weekend as it was last year. So,
Well, by next weekend, it's supposed to be back up to 31, 32. So
it must have knew the block party was happening.
exactly.
Mhm.
I would like to help out next weekend in the booth. So Lauren, if you could put
Hi.
me in your list.
Yes, I would love for you to be on my list. Hi, everyone.
Howdy.
Hi, howdy.
Hello, Lauren. Welcome back.
Yes, I made it. I
Mission
discovered my team.
accomplished.
Mission accomplished. Yep.
Good. Your
The
timing's perfect because I think we've run out of things to talk about that don't revolve around you.
We dragged it out just enough.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. You're
I
just
don't want to
waiting.
say that I texted Lauren 5 minutes ago and said, "What's your ETA?" And then felt like, okay, I can do a little 4-minute spiel.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm coming.
You
Yeah.
padded it transparently, James. Well done.
Yeah.
But I think we've covered that. So unless anyone else says anyone else, maybe we can move that we received this report and move on to the next one. Anyone else have anything to add?
And we'll talk about it again, in a couple weeks with the bigger committee,
in the
right?
main meeting,
So,
sure.
yeah, and Lauren and I will hopefully have a little more information at that time about what a task force might look like and what our next steps are. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So who would like to make the motion that the discussion regarding the council decision regarding the downtown HCD be received? Anyone? Mm. I think I froze. Oh, Mark, there we go. I'm sorry, I froze for a second, didn't see you. So that's moved by Mark. All in favor? Mm-mm-mm.
Looks like Andrew keeps freezing. So,
Mm-hmm.
Andrew, not sure if you can hear us or not, but you keep freezing on your end.
Yeah, I'm just going to switch my internet connection here. What? So the next item is 7.2, the statement of CHVI for 2 Queenston and 338 Geneva, led by Lauren. If you want to start that, Lauren, I'll just do my little switch over here, and I may pop out for a second, but I'll be back.
Sure. It looks like I should be able to share my screen now, just so you guys have eyes on it. So I circulated this to everyone. I have made a couple of changes, but I'll just read through it, and then I'll throw it up on the screen and see if there's anything that anyone wants to add or any questions or anything that seems to be missing or any errors. So I put together, based on our previous research presented at the last couple of meetings, I put together a draft statement of cultural heritage value or interest. Basically, so we have a description of property. The property. Another thing is I looked into the property itself and how it's structured within our system and its lot fabric, and it is officially 2 Queenston Street and not 38 Geneva with 2 Queenston, and that's the whole property. So I'm including both addresses here, but I might make some changes throughout. The property at 2 Queenston Street and 38 Geneva Street is located at the northeast corner of Queenston and Geneva Streets in the city of St. Catharines. The building occupies a highly visible and prominent urban lot at a key intersection on the eastern edge of the downtown core. It is a 2-story brick commercial structure with a complex construction history, including multiple phases of addition and alteration dating from the mid-19th to late 19th centuries. Constructed on a stone foundation, the building features red-orange brick laid in common bond, arched brick voussoirs with stone keystones, and Victorian cast iron and pilasters at storefront level. Sorry. I thought I was. Sorry, James just informed me that I'm not actually sharing my screen, so I'm going to make sure. I thought I was. Sorry about that. Oh, there you go. Is that better? Can everyone see my screen now? There you go. Great. The roof is a complex, shallow pitched hip roof and salt bucks form, indicative of the later 19th century renovations. The building is street facing on both Geneva and Queenston Streets with no significant setbacks and contributes to the pedestrian oriented commercial character of the surrounding area. For the statement of cultural heritage value or interest, its design or physical value. The building is a representative example of mid to late 19th century Victorian commercial architecture. It features characteristic materials and forms, including red-orange common bond brickwork, arch brick voussoirs with stone keystones, the detailed masonry craftsmanship, the iron pilasters integrated into the north and west elevations reflect the Victorian era emphasis on ornate and durable commercial storefronts. Shallow pitched hip roof and saltbox addition added during a series of substantial late 19th century renovations, replaced earlier roof forms and unified the structure's present massing. Variations in brick coursing and construction style throughout the building visually document its phased evolution and adaptation over time. For historical or associative value, the site has strong historical associations with notable figures from St. Catharines' 19th century commercial and civic history. Originally developed by Gershom Wright, an early cabinet maker, assessor, and contributor to local public life, the property became known as Wright's Corner. In 1861, the site was acquired by Thomas Brownlee, a prominent grocer and merchant who operated multiple commercial ventures from this location and who contributed to the development of the city's commercial economy. Brownlee's tenure established the building's identity as Brownlee's Corner, a name that endured for decades and reflected the property's longstanding role in the local retail landscape. For its contextual value, occupying a prominent corner lot at the intersection of Queen and Geneva Streets, the property serves as a visually and spatially defining element of the downtown streetscape. Its historic role as a commercial anchor at this transitional gateway contributes to the continuity and character of the surrounding urban fabric. The building's scale, siting, and architectural presence reinforce the commercial identity of the corridor and maintain visual links to the city's 19th century development pattern. Its long-standing local recognition as Wright's Corner and Brownlee's Corner further solidifies its landmark status within the community. So heritage attributes, I'm actually going to move this over here so we can look at the heritage attributes together. The heritage attributes that embody the cultural heritage value of 2 Queenston Street and 38 Geneva Street include the red-orange brick construction laid in common bond, segmental arch windows with brick vousards and stone keystones on the Geneva Street facade, cast iron pilasters located on the Queenston and Geneva Street facades, the shallow pitched hip roof with minimal overhangs and boxed eaves, the stone foundation with visible coarse limestone units, variations in masonry indicating multiple phases of construction, tall vertically proportioned upper story windows with stone sills, the overall massing and siding of the building on a prominent downtown corner, and the continuity of the building's commercial storefront configuration, including original window and door openings on the north and west facades. So, any questions, comments, additions, things to remove, things that are missing from the list of the heritage attributes? And we talked about before is like what this is a list of the things that we would want protected if there are any future alterations, and that display the cultural heritage value of the property.
Did we mention the that little rear L that is attached to the back end of 38 Geneva?
I don't think we mention it specifically. Let's see if I can't.
Because that's part of the, you know, the original structure.
Yeah. What we can do is kind of like what we did with the St. Paul Crescent properties is, so you mean right here?
That
We
part
can,
that's there on the side.
right here?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, if that's part of the original building, we can specifically mention it, and then also in the documentation show which parts of the massing we're speaking of when we talk about the massing. We can say original massing or original massing components, or massing as displayed.
I think original 19th century massing
Yeah.
might do it.
Okay. There we go. Sounds good. I was speaking to James about next steps for this one. And I think with both this and with the Welland Street property, assuming that that went well earlier, we'll start to reach out to the owners, much like we did with the last round of designations. We may change this process or adapt this process. As we start to look at prioritizing additional buildings and structures. But for now, that's the next step, I think. So does anyone else have any questions or concerns, or would you like to move to moving that I can move forward with the reaching out to the owner and eventually coming to going to the regular hack with this?
So any more questions or thoughts on this one before we do that? Appearing to be none. We need someone to move that the draft statement of cultural heritage value or interest and heritage attributes for 2 Queenston and 38 Geneva, as amended through the discussion, be accepted, and that staff be directed to proceed with consulting with the property owners and presenting the draft SCHVI and heritage attributes to the St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee for consideration. Anyone like to make that motion? Holly, in favor? Okay. So that carries as well. And that takes us to the next item, 7.4, next steps. And Lauren was going to give us a bit of an overview there.
Yeah, I think my overview may have changed since the conclusions about the downtown HCD. I wanted to have a conversation with you about how you wanted to proceed with the next kind of round of properties that we have kind of on the go, and then work towards prioritizing a next batch. So as far as next steps for 143 and 153 St. Paul Crescent and 3 Elizabeth Street. So we have the go-ahead to go to council and to seek designation for those properties. I didn't proceed with doing that this month because of the other things that were going on heritage-wise. But I think that that is my goal, is to have, within the next agenda cycle, bring those to council. For 219 Merritt, Mark, I know 219 Merritt, you had some information you've been sending me. I think 219 Merritt, that will be a focus of this month for getting all the information together to complete a 906. So if you have anything else to add to that, with the property, you've done some of the analysis, the architectural analysis and contextual analysis, and you have sent a bunch of that to me. But if you have any other photos or anything like that, send it my way, and I'm going to focus on that one for getting the materials together for next month for the 906 evaluation.
Okay, I'll send you what I have. I do have a document with photos on it.
Oh, perfect. That'd be
well.
wonderful. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. For 1 Welland Avenue, I know, Andrew, you did send me all of your research for that property and adjacent properties, and so that one too, I think, will be on my my radar for having everything together to look at that 906 evaluation together next month. And then 260 Vine Street, we do have the historical background for that one, and some really great photos. And so I think my goal for next meeting is to have the information needed to do that initial 906 evaluation with you guys for next month. I know we're going to be, I missed the conversation about the HCD, but I know we're going to be talking about it at the hack. And then looking at the task force, and then looking at the possibility of shifting our focus for prioritizing specific properties in the downtown. So I kind of wanted to have a little conversation with you about thinking about what you wanted to prioritize for the next round as we start to move forward with that. If you want to look in the HCD study, there is a list of properties that the consultants have suggested would be good candidates for prioritization for part 4. It, but also if there's anything on your radar as being of high priority outside of the downtown, now is the time to kind of speak up about those properties because we're going to be shifting our focus.
I think we can probably circulate that list for them.
Yeah. Oh, I can do that.
We'll
Yes.
pull it out of the
Yes. Yeah,
report.
absolutely. Yeah.
It's a little long, so
Yeah. The report is
When-
the report is like I'll screenshot it. It's like half a page with a whole bunch of like in each sub area everything that they feel would be worth pursuing. So I'll send that to you.
One note on Welland Avenue for you, Lauren.
Yeah.
When that one was added to the registry, we also looked at adding the adjacent property, 180 Welland, 180 Ontario Street
Mhm.
as well. I don't remember if this was before your tenure or early in your tenure, but that was a case where the owner objected to even being added to the registry. And
Yeah.
that one is in the scope of the report I did, and I think would be a good candidate for designation, but I think it's one that's not going to fly for that reason.
Yeah. I mean, we can.
Well,
Oh, sorry.
sorry. I was just saying, Mark has mentioned that he's worked on that property and knows the owner, so he may have more insight into that than I do.
I mean, sorry, Mark, you go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay. No, I wasn't going to say anything. Sorry.
Oh,
Mhm.
that you're unmuting for. Yeah, I think that we might look at the possibility of doing a larger kind of like a mail out or public consultation, asking people again if they are interested in Part 4 designation, and maybe the owner has changed or maybe the owner's perspective has changed, and we can definitely include them in that. It does appear that there continues to be very little support for designating things that the owner doesn't consent to designating. But I think we can definitely include that in our next round of seeking buy-in and seeking consent for designation. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, and we can roll that in with the Lauren. I was telling you about how because we don't want to do any work that's not going to contribute directly to a designation, just because
Yeah.
we need to be as efficient as possible. So when we send out letters to the
Mhm.
property owners that were flagged by our consultants, we can lump all of those together with the properties that we're currently looking at as part of this group, and yeah, make sure that we get definitive answers from people and go from there. Because yeah, we don't want any wrenches thrown in at the last
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah, we're talking about like
The other comment I was going to make was when it comes to prioritizing those downtown properties, I would recommend against weighting the consultant's report too heavily, because I know just from having looked at it, I mean did a great job but they only researched to a certain level, and I know there are properties in there on that list that having some knowledge of local history I know are more significant than they've flagged them as, and I think that's something we want to factor in.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, just I'll send out that list, but you as a committee, if you have a chance to look through that, or I could even send you the inventory. That's also published online, flagging things that you know from your personal experience have that value or significant. I would appreciate that too.
Yeah, I'm guessing, Brian, you'll be able to flag a whole bunch of those for us, but you were gonna comment?
Yeah, I just had a question. Seeing this proposed task force for the downtown is just it's just been proposed and talked about, and I assume there's going to be a certain period where it's not going to be up and running right away. So do we have any additional properties outside the downtown core that we could maybe quickly research them in the meantime to get those out of the way? And then once the task force is set up, then, our energies can be devoted towards that.
Yeah, and I can do that too, or I can resend out the slightly lower priority buildings that we already had on our list from previous presentations. And we can take a look at that too, if there's anything in the meantime, and if there's anything of priority in the meantime that you guys can think of kind of during that transition. And I said that now's definitely the time to get to them, because I think once we shift to the downtown, we're going to be focusing on the downtown. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, if there's a property where, Brian, if you're like, oh, I know a bunch about that one, right? Like I don't know what else in your head. So there might be a property that you're like, oh, that one I actually could, put together something pretty quickly. I think we'd be definitely open to that. So once we recirculate that list to kind of refresh everyone's memory, if there's a property where you're like, you know what, I can tackle that one quickly, then great, right? So
Yeah, definitely.
One thing that I've talked about through the years, and now, with what happened with the council vote the other night, I keep talking about that one stupid little strip of red brick that is all that remains of the Russell Hotel. If we decided that we wanted to designate that little strip of red brick, I mean, can something like that be done potentially? Because I'd hate to see that little strip of 1840s Francis Stinson's hotel building just totally vanish,
I think the concern about that might be, and I agree, we wouldn't want to see it vanish, but at a time when heritage is kind of at a focal point and people are really focusing their attention on it, if we were shown to be devoting attention to those little slivers rather than, big buildings like the St. Catharines Club or something, people might say, what's going on? Why are we focusing on that? Because I think people can definitely wrap their head around the idea that like our churches on Church Street and the St. Catharines Club and some of these like the building on Welland Ave, like these are buildings that like the average person would say, oh, that would be bad if we lost that. The sliver, I think you're kind of finding a niche of people that would find that as really super important, and I think we're a big part of that niche. So I think we'd want to focus our attention on like the low-hanging fruit a little bit for now, and then maybe once we've got the ball rolling, then we can look at things like that.
I'm not familiar with that, the sliver of brick. But I'd have to look at like what the property situation is like too, because we'd be designating the whole property, even if only that portion of it would be a heritage attribute. And I think that it's a parking lot.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
interesting.
parking lot right at the corner of James and St. Paul.
Yeah. So if we designated that and anything was proposed for that site, it'd be subject to a heritage permit. So I could look into that.
You've walked by that sliver.
I'm sure I know. And once I see it, I'm sure I've seen it. I just didn't realize what it was.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull it up on screen.
I'm sure I even appreciated it when I saw it, just again not knowing what it was.
Here, I'll share my screen. I have it up on my screen right now. Oh,
do you
Lauren,
need to?
I gave you back the hosting duties.
You gave me full hosting. You could have made
Yeah.
me co-host. Yeah. Here, 1 second. Make host. You're now the host again.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So you should be able to see that. And this was obviously where the Russell Hotel is, but there is a sliver here where that's the only remnant of the hotel.
And then all along that wall, which looks like it's whitewashed. I mean, that's also the sidewall of the Russell Hotel.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I'm going to look into.
You can see the window openings and stuff there too, where they were bricked in.
Yeah. But it's actually, there's quite a bit of the wall there. Like from the other side, you can't really appreciate it very well, but from this side, you can at least see that there's, at least a couple feet there. maybe a foot or two.
Yeah. I'll look into it like as far as approaches to designating things like ruins and artifacts more than buildings.
Right.
Because it is a curious case and it's something that you would want protected. It's just what's the best way of doing that. And because we're so property based, it would be that whole property and the only attribute would be that wall. So I'd look into it. Yeah.
I think the other, oh, sorry, Brian, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, because Francis Stinson, I mean, he was one of the early murders that took place in St. Catharines, and it was like totally sensational at the time when it happened. He was, I think, poisoned by his wife and her lover, and they
Drama.
both were hanged.
Oh my God.
So it's got a lot of history on that corner.
The other thing that I was going to mention was the risk of losing that sliver right now, I think is probably small. We haven't seen anything, there isn't there might be an active application for the property, but it's been sitting there for quite a while, vacant, right? So, yeah, I guess that's the other part, right? Is we want to focus our attention on risk, on like important buildings and risk, right? I think are the right now where we have a short runway, so I think that's the focus. But if this property were to be proposed for development again, Lauren and I can have those conversations with whoever the developer might be down the road as well. So.
And I do think if we're looking at like sending out a letter to downtown properties, seeing who is pro Part 4 designation, and we send out a letter to the hotel wall owner and they're like, yeah, then yeah, let's do it. Absolutely. Yeah. We'll add it to the list.
Okay.
There's so many factors, right? You guys know this because we've been going through this process for a while, but finding the right properties and how we can best use our energies and what's going to be the most successful is hard. But I do think we do have some momentum now, and we just got to keep going, and we're going to keep knocking these off the list. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions about next steps, anyone? No? Well, thank you.
It just seems like a lot of work. A lot of extra work.
A monumental amount of extra work, no doubt. And it definitely will be. So I guess we don't need the motion in this case. Thank you, Lauren. Takes us to item 8, business arising from the minutes. There is none. Items of correspondence, again, I believe there are none, yes?
None.
So number 10, the date of our next meeting is August 15th August 15th, 2025. And the last item is we now move to have a motion to adjourn. We need a motion to adjourn. Anyone like to make that motion? Anyone? Holly moves that the St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee Designation Subcommittee be adjourned at 3:58 p.m. In favor? Okay, that carries. So we are officially adjourned.
Lauren, do you have enough people for next week for the to man everything? Let us-
No, no. It's gonna be mostly me. So if you are interested in coming for an hour or two, I'd really appreciate that. What's a good time that works for you?
I like morning. I like the
Morning? Oh, right. It starts at 11:30.
Okay.
So if you want to, it's the only morning slot that we have. But if you come at 11:30, you can be in the booth with me to start off. That's wonderful. Thank you, Holly. And thank you all for waiting for me. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Just one question about the regular meeting that we're having. Did you get my message
We're
about
still on
Hank
YouTube.
Bikus?
Yeah, it's okay, Christian.
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay. Just wanted to double check.
No, we're okay.
Yeah. So you got my message about Hank Bikus wanting to attend the meeting?
Yes, we did. Both James and I have looked into it internally. We believe it can go to the hack, but we just not this month. I have a meeting with Amanda with Parks to see what's been proposed and what they need from us and what that participation looks like. And it is something that definitely the hack can be involved in. It's just knowing, first of all, getting the context for what's being proposed, and then knowing where the appropriate place is for the hack's involvement. So that will happen, just not this month.
Yeah, it was just a little premature. Hank was
Yeah.
eager to get going, but yeah, we just needed to have
Understandable.
more conversations internally. That's all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
should I be emailing him to say?
I already did.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay. Well, we already adjourned, so everybody
Yeah.
can go as they please.
All right. It was nice
All right.
seeing
Good to
everybody.
see
We'll see you in a
everybody.
couple weeks. Yeah.
Everyone
Good
have a great
weekend.
weekend.